Um, this is pretty much in a few minutes the history of this derelict building that we all like to talk about. We are gathered here today to honor and say goodbye to a lofty piece of our Fairbanks history. This building has loomed over the Fairbanks skyline for the past 72 years, and it has served us well during its first 50 years of that time. The Polaris building had its grand opening in 1952, and it was viewed as a crown jewel to the big urban renewal projects that were going on in Fairbanks at that time. It was the tallest building in town and the most modern as well. The Polaris offered modern, affordable apartment living at a time in Fairbanks there was a severe housing shortage going on. It was originally known as the Hill Building, named after the original builder, longtime Fairbanks and Rudell, also known as Rudy Hill. He was the president of the 2nd and Lacey Street Apartments, which was also known as the Polaris Investment Corporation of Seattle, that owned and managed the building. The Polaris is 11 stories tall and had plenty of commercial space for lease. There were 96 efficiency apartments up there, and 48 one-bedroom apartments that together comprised a total of 144 residential living spaces. Over the years, there were several restaurants, bars, public and private offices, meeting spaces, radio and TV transmitters, and many stores, all located within the building. It also served the Fairbanks community as the official Cold War fallout shelter. There was even a private detective office in there. This multi-story building was a hub of Fairbanks and community activities and social life during the 1950s through the 1970s. To build the Polaris, capital was raised from various sources, with 4% coming from a Federal Housing Administration loan that restricted the building's use to residential apartment dwellings only. Now that's an important thing to remember. It was dictated by the National Housing Act. It also controlled the final rental prices of the apartments within the building. Because of the FHA loan, the Polaris was not to ever be used as a hotel. And when management allowed tourists and temporary residents to stay, they found themselves in court on charges of violating the conditions of the 1950s mortgage loan from the federal government. This action occurred in 1958 because the surrounding local hotels complained that the Polaris was being used to house tourists who were booked through West Tours in Seattle, thus cutting them out of some of the tourist trade. The rent-paying residents of the building came from all over. Many newlywed couples made their first home in the Polaris. There were also a lot of military families and several families with children. It was also an easy place to live for the elderly as well, with modern elevators and convenience to other downtown businesses. The Polaris even offered fee-based maid and linen services to its residents. The building lobby was done up in an elegant, mid-century, sleek decor. Mostly it was in pastels. Stratosphere blue and gray were two predominant colors in the lobby. The hallways were in a muted green to go with the outside sea green color of the original paint on the building. The top floor was for meetings, banquets, and food service. Access to various floors was on the modern elevators located within the building. The building was fully steam heated and featured a fully modern fire suppression system. On the top floor, with its magnificent views of Fairbanks, that was all rented out for parties and meetings, and at that time it was known as the top of the pole. By 1962, it was reported by the local newspaper that Rudy Hill was entertaining a couple of prominent LA real estate businessmen at the Polaris who were rumored to be interested in purchasing the building. In 1969, the building was sold to 3 local Fairbanks men. Some of their family is here today: Wally Burnett, Alex Miller, and Dan Thompson. Right before the start of the pipeline boom. They took over ownership and steered the Polaris through the rollicking pipeline era, leasing the first floor to Alyeska Pipeline Corp., who also had secured the options to lease the second and third floors as well. This lease proved to be a major cash cow for the partners during those years. The new owners covered the building in a fresh coat of paint, secured new commercial leases, planned a complete remodel of all the apartments, leased the entire top floor to the Petroleum Club, and added on the annex that would house the Black Angus Steakhouse in 1974. Fairbanks, it seemed, was really moving up, and business was certainly booming. The Petroleum Club had signed a 3-year lease, and part of that agreement was for the owners of the building to renovate the top floor into plush club rooms with a full-time restaurant and bar. It became the place to be and be seen in Fairbanks society, and many local clubs and organizations around town changed their meeting place to the Petroleum Club's elegant rooms. After a few years later, during the pipeline boom, the Petroleum Club, ironically, was financially unable to renew, and the top floor came up for grabs in 1975. 2 years later, the Tiki Cove moved from the basement of the Mecca Bar on 2nd Avenue to occupy the entire top floor of the Polaris building. The Polaris building faced many challenges during the 1970s and 80s. There was a constant struggle to keep up with changing fire codes, building codes, and security both within and outside the building. Unfortunately, along with the pipeline boom, crime became a prominent feature of the downtown area, and the Polaris seemed to be a favored spot for an abundance of petty criminal activity both within the building and outside on the streets around the property. I guess we're all standing in a crime scene. After the boom days of the pipeline, the profits quickly dwindled for the partners, and in an effort to increase revenues, they tried running part of the building as a hotel. But it was becoming outdated, and there was not enough business to keep it going. By 1992, Burnett and his partners had to end their ownership of the building as part of the bankruptcy proceedings. The Polaris building changed hands once again and became a seasonal hotel, which never seemed to fully get going either. In 2001, during the winter months when the building was not in use, a catastrophic water leak occurred that caused major flooding in the basement. It damaged much of the building's mechanical equipment, and that incident, coupled with an enormous debt owed in back property taxes to the city, caused the wheels running the building as a seasonal hotel business to come to a fast and grinding halt. Over the next 20 years, there were many plans to fix the abandoned and rapidly deteriorating building. There were new owners with big plans and negotiations that resulted in failure, which became a vicious cycle leading to even further decline. The ongoing state of decrepitude caused a lot of frustration in the Fairbanks community, and the Polaris building was viewed as a blight upon downtown Fairbanks and became the brunt of many local jokes. In an effort to save the Polaris, there were several proposals written as letters to the editor of the Newsminer. Some of the suggestions were to make it into a training facility for a local union's apprenticeships programs. One was to turn it into a jail, another a halfway house, and one writer suggested converting it into a large indoor growing factory. Despite all the meetings, planning, lobbying, and financial dealing, the efforts to save the Polaris ultimately ended in complete failure. After years of abandonment and neglect, the Polaris no longer met the city and borough requirements for modern, multi-story buildings. Furthermore, attempts at bringing the damaged property into compliance would cost far more than what the building was worth, with little chance of ever turning a profit. What once was viewed as a shining star of downtown Fairbanks has become a decaying eyesore and a threat to public health. Thanks to the years of diligent effort led by our Mayor David Cruz and with the help of Senator Murkowski and many others that were recruited along the way, we can now move forward with the demolition of this old building, taking a giant leap towards a brighter future for this part of our Golden Heart City.
That's why she's a Fairbanks historian. Senator, I'd like you to read something to the people of Fairbanks here.
Polaris building. For over 70 years, you have been a part of the family of Fairbanks. For 50 years, you were the heart and soul of our vibrant downtown. All things do come to an end. Even though your days are now limited, you will never be forgotten. You will always be remembered with reverence and awe. We bid you a very fond farewell.